Hi.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, is everybody coming out of their lunch coma yet? Still in it?
We have to check, is everyone caffeinated? Do you have some form of, there you go, okay, good.
You want to ensure we don't goes away?
That you don't, no, I want to ensure I don't doze away.
So your first presentation for this afternoon is making the most of COIL grants, and to present this afternoon are Kyle Peck and Larry Reagan. Both are co-directors of the COIL project, which is the Center for Online Innovation and Learning.
Use the one on the side, Larry. Sorry.
Kyle
Yep.
and Larry.
These are the people who jobs and technology.
That's right. There's a vote of confidence.
We're trying to make you feel comfortable.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of, yeah, I think it's this device I'm not real keen about. Do we have any other?
No, Larry, let me just give you another quick tutorial here.
I was doing the left and
So the
right
one on
there.
the side,
Okay.
up goes backwards.
Okay.
Whoops. Oh, you broke it now. Yeah.
Okay.
Down, forward.
Down
up,
goes forward.
Backwards.
Okay. All right.
I think the problem was the mouse there.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was,
Okay. So my name's Larry Reagan. I'm one of the 4 directors of COIL, the Center for Online Innovation and Learning. And I really appreciate you coming in this afternoon and learning a little bit more about what we're doing in our organization. COIL is a relatively new institution or organization at Penn State. It was started about 1.5 years ago. It's a combination of 4 different organizations actually: Outreach, IST, College of Education, and ITS, which is at Penn State, is our Information Technology Services Group. And it's funded by Outreach. So, you know, I was thinking about this the other day, how fortunate we are that we have the Penn State World Campus, which creates revenue for our colleges, and they're taking a small portion of that revenue and embedding it back into the institution, reinvesting it in order to help us keep moving forward. So I get teased a little bit about this, but I really do see COIL as a research hub. We're a place where we like to connect spokes. We like to connect individuals, project ideas with each other. And I've had some conversations out of the COIL space out here by the stairs, and as I'm talking to people, I'm saying, have you thought about talking to this person in this college? And we're really trying to stimulate that kind of work, because we know that that synergy is where there will be really new ideas and real initiatives that are created. The other thing that we do a little bit different in COIL, I think, is that we're really trying to engage all of the community. Sometimes at an institution like Penn State, research is seen as primarily a faculty or a research type position. We recognize, and I think the leadership of Penn State recognized, there's a lot of really cool, innovative stuff that's being done by people who might not have faculty titles, or they might not have research associate titles. They're staff or students. And we've got students who have submitted for COIL RIGs as well. So we're trying to figure out how do we bring all of those individuals together, because Kyle has this saying he likes to use about, from a book he read that says, you know, most of the smart people in the world probably don't work for you. You know, they're out there someplace else. So how do you hook into them and bring them into your project ideas? So our idea is really, and maybe we should have another word after the word experiment. Maybe we should say experiment, fail, learn, and share outcomes.
it's not required, though.
I
Failure
know,
is
it's not
just,
required,
it's optional.
but
Yeah.
one of the things we talked about very early on is the COIL rigs that you'll hear a bit more about from Kyle. They're not guaranteed winners. They're not guaranteed to produce something, but they are guaranteed to produce learning. So even if the experiment doesn't quite work out the way you thought, it doesn't mean that it wasn't worth trying. We learn from that and we embed it back into the organization and into our thinking. We're also trying to capitalize on what Penn State's really well known for, and that is the use of information technology and instructional technology in the teaching and learning process, whether we're doing it in face-to-face, in a blended format, or online. And I like to point out the term COIL was intentionally crafted in a way that it's not about online learning. It's about online innovation. how that impacts learning in all different delivery formats. So we use a couple different mechanisms to build this community and this hub, and some of you have already been picked on by me as I go around and saying, hey, that's a really neat idea. How about doing a COIL conversation for us? So COIL conversations are more local webinar style talks where we ask a presenter, and we've had, well, I don't know, probably a dozen by now, sometimes generated. John Shank, who's at Berks campus, said, hey, I don't as much have an answer, but I got a question, and I'd really like to put this question out to the community. It's a great COIL conversation. We hosted John. Usually one of the directors will serve as a host for you that day. We take care of all the technology infrastructure. Then we invite you in. John talked for maybe 20, 25 minutes about what his question was, and the rest of the time is really about dialogue. So think about this as a strategy to get ideas for if you want to submit a rig. But one of the things you can do is to say, hey, Kyle, I'd like to do a COIL conversation on a particular topic I have. Can I get some space? We'll give you the space. You get ideas from that, and that may help you then formulate. And you might meet people who are interested in your idea as well. And they'll come back to you and say, yeah, I'd like to join you on that. And that gets us at some of that interdisciplinary work that we're so engaged in. Usually, we sponsor these as broadcast. Every so often, we're not allowed. Terry Ellison from Apple has a policy about not broadcasting these kind of conversations. And we just did it as a local. We had people gathered in a room. That's a bit unusual. Most of the time, we're using Connect Pro. We got some money from an alum, Rich Fisher. And if any of you are over by the Rackley building and Keller building, there's a little alleyway there called Floyd Fisher. Floyd was Rich's dad, his father. They have deep Penn State roots, and Rich has given us some money to host a speaker series. And the idea here is that we go out and find people who are really thinking about higher education, about innovation, about tools, changes in the higher education platform, and we bring them to the table, basically. Usually it's a 2-day meetings that we arrange. They do something called a COIL Fisher Talk, where they come in, present their ideas in a more of a formal sense, a lecture. We've been doing those in the library, in the Foster Auditorium. I just realized I'm supposed to be next to the mic. So Sir John Daniel came in June, I think, of last year and did just put out his ideas and what he's seeing around the world. We had some great dialogue. And we're open both on the COIL conversations and the Fisher Talks. If you have people in your domain that you'd love to see come to Penn State and give a talk, and if we can relate it back to the larger mission of the organization of COIL, we're happy to fund that. We'll arrange for you to bring them in. We have travel funds, we have stipend funds, we can take care of a lot of that. If they're very specific just to your domain, astrophysics or something, and there's really not a relationship to how we're going to use that to change online learning, we might have to stretch that a little bit. But hey, it's always worth asking. Other collaborations that we've done is working with the TLT. For example, we're co-sponsoring today's event. They've had other guests come in, and we sort of share different kinds of experiences. We like to collaborate. We're all about reaching out. We do have some resources. We can often bring things to the table. As a matter of fact, I would mention one here. Kyle and Chris Gamrat are going to lead a badging workshop. If you're interested in badging, this is the guy you want to talk to, or Chris Gamrat. Really, really interesting stuff. They know how to implement this. We're going to do on April 14th. That'll be a COIL sponsored event.
Sorry for being ignorant, but what's badging?
So badging is, without going too far down that path, badging is a form of awarding people credit and recognition, validation for small accumulated experiences, outcomes that can add up to bigger things. So I'm doing a particular project, a leadership development program, and Kyle's been a help to me. I'm looking at learning more about how do I take a 4-month course that I teach and put it in smaller chunks and apply credit in the badging system. So it's fascinating. It's a lot. As a matter of fact, it lines up with what Daniel Pink was talking about today, about what drives people and motivates people.
So just to add one line to that, Think of it as a digital image that's clickable and has metadata behind it, including what you had to do to earn it and links out to how it was assessed, maybe even links to the evidence itself if it exists in electronic form. So it's a mini e-portfolio or credential.
Doing now with LinkedIn, that you could put your certificate connected.
No, those are endorsements. So there's a good article by Reid Hoffman, who's like the head of LinkedIn, called Disrupting the Diploma, where he acknowledges the difference between that and digital badges.
So the other thing that we started up with this, I told you we get some funding from the World Campus. As a matter of fact, all of the funding from the revenue generated by the World Campus goes into the university. It doesn't go into running COIL. That's a completely separate funds. So we have, just between friends here, we have about $500,000 per year that we're allowed to take and devise a mechanism of getting that money back into research grants. We'll talk about some of the specifics of these in a second, but the idea is to think about that issue about an online innovation. So when I'm talking to people, I always leave them with two things at the very end. First is you have to think about how you define your RIG proposal, your research initiation proposal to COIL around what's different, unique, special, what's innovative about your project idea. So if someone comes and says, hey, I'd really like to buy Microsoft Excel and use it in my business class, and that would really be innovative. Well, 15 years ago, yeah, maybe not so much now. So it's really thinking about how to do things differently that you can make an impact in your learning environment. What happens is, as you have an impact in your learning environment, we're going to be looking at that saying, you did that in physics. I wonder if we can find a way to apply that to education. So as Penn State is going down this path of really innovative technology implementation, we want to be looking at innovative teaching application as well. And that's what the COIL rigs are really designed to do. We really encourage you to think about cross-discipline relationships. So if you say, I'm in the College of Education and I've got my idea about badging and I got some skills on how I might do that. I wonder if I team up with somebody in a College of Engineering or in computer science or an IST. That makes for a really strong project. Then if you say, the people at Emory University in Georgia are doing badging at a pretty high level, it'd be great to maybe team up with them. And so you bring Emory and University of Chicago, and then you're thinking, the Open University in the UK has been doing this stuff, and pretty soon you can put together, without getting too complicated, you can put together a research study that really reaches out into not only Penn State's community, but into at a national level and international. Those get sort of special preference because it's beginning to show, well, frankly, it gets a little visibility for Penn State and for COIL as well. But it also goes back to that idea, that comment about, most of the smart people don't work for you. Think about tapping into those smart people and bringing them into the fold. Love to see campus-to-campus relationships, really cool. One of the things we want to do is get this engine going so that we're going to give you funding that might be up to $50,000 per cycle. And I know we've got some COIL recipients in here. I think our average is $32K, would you say, Kyle, or 29?
It's on one of the slides coming
it's
up.
on coming up, okay. But we funded projects up to $50,000. And the idea is that it's an initiation grant. It gets the idea started. And we'll work with you on, well, how do we take that and go after some larger funding? So maybe it's Gates Foundation or Lumina or NSF or something like that. It's a way to do a little proof of concept on your idea, that you can show a funding agency that you've tested this idea. It also helps us, and I would say, establish and maintain. I mean, Penn State is looked at as a leader in the use of not only online but instructional technology, and we want to keep that in the forefront. It's important for the institution in terms of our reputation and position.
Before you leave that slide, I'd just like to focus on the and D on the first line there. So we started out talking about creating a research a research center, but then we realized it's really research and development. A lot of times the ideas can't be done unless you can build something. So the funding is extendable to the actual building of tools you need rather than just doing the research.
So that's a good point that came up this afternoon or this morning in one of the conversations. Someone asked, do I have to have a publication at the end of it? And we said, that would be really cool, if at the end of your project. But no, it doesn't have to have that. It might be as Kyle said, a development of some sort that you can take back into your learning experience, and then we can leverage that into larger spaces. So we say that's also applied, not only empirical research. So we have a little bit of the COIL process, and Kyle, if it's okay, I'm going to turn it over to you. I like to do this periodically, but Kyle's really guided and helped us frame out the entire RIG process. And I think, a little bumpy the first time, smoother the second time, and we've really got a nice system now. And he's going to talk to you as well about how you might get engaged in serving as a reviewer that gives you sort of inside information then about how to submit a RIG.
Thank you. So I basically just copied our process that we had in the College of Education for research initiation grants, so I don't get too much credit for that. But basically, these are the steps we go through. We develop and release and publicize the RFP, the request for proposals. So we'll have a stage that you're going to be seeing all this happen in the next week or so. Then we conduct webinars where we invite people to sit down who are interested, and we go through the criteria and the application process. We do that twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and then we record those and post those on the website. So there are conversations, there's a chance to ask questions if you have questions. We'll cover most of what you need to know today, so that may not be necessary. We recruit reviewers who are going to be the reviewers of the proposals when they come in, develop a review process and tools to guide that, spreadsheets and surveys through which the reviewers put their data in, and spreadsheets that bring all that together. We provide consultation to RIG teams. So if you're thinking of doing a grant and you want to sit down with some people from COIL to just listen to your idea and say, maybe, as Larry said, that's not innovative. Maybe you're applying that to your field, which hasn't been done in your field, but it isn't. And we can help you find maybe innovations to supplement your idea. Or we can help you bring in team members. As Larry said, maybe it would be great to have some IST colleagues working with you, or from other people. If you're doing something around flipped classroom, we know who else is doing that on campus, and we can bring you collaborators. So feel free to contact us and ask for consultation. Those are pretty much straightforward. But the last one, once you're out there, we're trying to provide support to you once you've actually got a grant to help make that successful. That's easier said than done, and we're thinking of adding a person in coming years to provide more support to the teams after they win. So we have done this now in the fall, spring, fall, and here's our spring again. So we're about to run our fourth iteration. I'm going to show you some data now just to show you how the collaborations are actually happening. We didn't really roll in the most recent set of data, but we have a whole bunch of, did I hide the wrong slides? I meant to hide these slides. So I was just going to use the spring data.
Couldn't see them anyway.
Okay, well, see, I wanted to just start here because I have the same kind of data from the fall and then the spring. And spring, it's easier, it's bigger, and you can see the growth anyway. So we recruited, we had 19 proposals. I think I wanted to start it right here. Okay, so in the spring of last year, we had 24 proposals, which is up from 15 in the fall. So you see it's been growing a little bit. We had 132 named participants. That's people named as participants, some of whom are in this room. We had 11 different colleges that were submitted, that were represented in those 24 proposals, which I think is a sign that we're getting out there. 6 different campuses, 36 academic programs. So in those 24 proposals, you can see that 1.5, academic programs. It wasn't just one place. There were at least, an average of 1.5 academic programs behind those. And 18 different support organizations. Those include things like TLT, the libraries, WPSU, other organizations around campus that are important to helping you get your work done. So we like that. We like to see that kind of collaboration. and 17 partner institutions. Institutions from, other than ours, as Larry said. We know there's expertise out there. And one of the ways we allow you to use the funds is to get collaborators here or to get you there. Or, whenever we can, we do those things electronically. But we will support the use of these funds for collaboration across institutions. So we got 24 proposals, which was up, I think I just said most of that. So the $796,000 was the total requested, which was up, again, almost doubled what was requested the year before. We funded 11 of those 24 proposals. So one of the questions you ask generally is, what's the acceptance rate? That's better than I know anywhere, right? So, I know if you're like me, that looks pretty good. And we don't know. The more proposals, the lower that rate is. But still, it's one of your best chances to get funded that I know of. Average award was around $29,000. As Larry said, you can propose for up to $50,000. We say $15,000 to $50,000, but if somebody came in well below that, that's fine. That's fine. So what you need, ask for what you need. So those 11 proposals included 67 named researchers across 3 different campuses, 17 academic programs, 9 support units, 9 colleges, and 13 partnering institutions. So it's not, we do give points for that. And I'll show you in a moment the scoring criteria that we use so you can understand how that's not a coincidence. You can get funded without collaboration, but collaboration is going to help. And it's partly what Larry said, and also that we think all of us is smarter than any of us. So although we're not afraid of failure, we know that ultimately the continuation of this program will have to do more with successes than lessons learned from failure. And so we do ask, is this team likely to be able to do what it's setting out to do for that amount of money in that amount of time? So that's where feasibility, teams make the feasibility answer more often yes. I just have lists here. In case you're wondering, was my college, was my campus? I'll just run through a couple of those lists. These are the 17 other institutions that were submitted in that round last year. These are the 6 campuses that had submitted. These are the 36 academic programs. So you see, I think this is very pleasing to me. I like that a lot, to see the diversity of places that understand that online learning is what they do, and know that we exist too. And these are the support units. So I'm going to leave this list up a little longer because we don't necessarily think in terms of those units, but these are all different organizations within Penn State that that people said would be useful to them in completing this. So leave that up for inspiration. There are people out there who can help you be successful, and they like to partner on this. They want to be part of these interesting, innovative programs. So this is just the percentages. Those numbers changed to percentages. We had more than doubled the requests. We had 60% more proposals, 106% more funding requested, and the average size of the request went from $26,000 to $33,000. And as we said, the average funding is around $29,000.
Well, before you
Yes.
go on, just a comment. If your unit, academic unit, department, whatever support system would like to, or you think would benefit by us coming to talk with you, we would love to do that. We'd love to come and visit a faculty meeting, or just let us know. We have four directors and a couple support staff. We'll make that happen. One of the things that's on our list, we're hoping to push through better next year on this, but is getting out to our campus colleagues as well. So, if you invite us out there for a day, maybe we can arrange some sort of a program, talk with your faculty, talk with your support, talk with your students. We're really interested in getting out and interacting and communicating with our colleagues across the university. So don't be shy about asking that. We can do this kind of a rundown or talk about some of the projects we're working on as well.
Thank you. And the principal investigator, the leader on this, can be a staff member, can be a faculty member, can be a student. So don't think that you have to have that faculty PI. It's the idea and the team that you put together that's important. So if a student has a great idea, run with it. We have funded students in the past, and we like when that happens. So it's about research and development. That's the important part. You know, there's this little cycle that we believe exemplifies what happens. Research, you know, leads to development. Implementation leads to more research, leads to publication, and it just goes around. Every time I conduct any research, it asks more questions than it answers. And so we just want this cycle to be happening, you know, many times over all around online innovations. So the RFP is always on the COIL website. You can find that anytime. It reveals all the criteria and shows how the scoring is going to be done. So I'm going to jump us out there for a moment, and we'll take a quick look at that. So here's the new COIL website. Prominent right here, COIL RIG. So with a call for proposals, first thing. So if you want to find out, you know, what this is about, you click that link, and then here it is, call for proposals. It talks about eligibility, deadlines, everything you could possibly want to know is there. The funds may be used to support. This probably is worthy of a little conversation. So we're not eager to dump all of that money into faculty release time, because we understand faculty generally have 50% of their time as discretionary research, right? But we can fund some faculty time in the summer, or we'd prefer to fund, you know, like the replacement cost. If somebody needs to be released from a course, get a course release, rather than pay 12.5% of the faculty member's salary, we would rather pay the replacement cost to have somebody else step in and teach that course. So it's not, you know, we're not excited about putting the majority of the money into something that can be avoided. We allow equipment to be purchased, but not equipment that should normally be purchased by, you know, the department or the college or something. So we're not going to buy a new laptop for a professor. Professors should have access to technology. But again, if it's Google Glass, or if it's you know, tablets for an e-tutoring project, or if it's something that's not normally there, not normally funded, equipment's okay. Staff compensation. So staff members, we view that slightly differently. And most staff members have a full-time job, running full-time. They don't have discretionary time for research. So if you need to hire software developers, instructional designers, they're going to have to be removed from a project so they can work on your project. So funding that is viewed differently and is favorably reviewed.
Can you tell us how that works specifically?
How it works specifically, we have finance people that will talk with your finance people about how specifically it works. So if you get a grant, we say we need your people to talk to our people. All right, so if you ask for a graduate assistant, there's a table that shows this is the stipend, this is the tuition, kind of a thing. Again, if you could meet us halfway and ask us to pay for the stipend, and you have a tuition, what do they call them anyway? So try and keep personnel costs down, but if not, we pay the actual cost. So there are different ways, you know, money. In general, you guys, all the recipients want the money to be transferred to their college where it'll be managed. That's not the way it happens. It's managed in outreach. And you submit a budget, and anything you're spending that's within your budget in the allocated lines just goes through. And I end up approving all of those expenses. But if you want to move money from one account to another account, you send me an email saying that you want to move this much from here to here, and it's not going to affect the delivery of your deliverables and, you know, or the due date or whatever, and we can make those adjustments. So if you budget for faculty salary, you have to budget for the F&A. Or no, so what happened is somebody budgeted for salary but didn't budget for F&A, and then the college charges us for both. So you'll get what you budget, and if you didn't budget for the second piece, you know, and one thing that happens in that first call is our people, our finance people, our outreach. Do you like how I'm now in outreach?
That. Hey, you're part of us.
Our outreach, our budget people talk with your budget people, and they both look at the budget. Do you see anything in here that's not right? Any unexpected things? So they'll go through the budget line by line and have a conversation about that. Is that enough for you, Brian? Okay. I could increase the font size. But basically, you know, just know you can come here. It'll tell you what you can and can't spend money for. We're okay with that. I wanted to scroll through a little more to, so these are the priorities. These are the things we care about. So we look for considerable promise for enhancing learning through online innovation, potential to stimulate significant proposals for external funding. So they're called research initiation grants, initiation, getting started. They're called seed grants. You know, we give you a little fertilizer seeds and then you grow something bigger. So one of the things we will ask for is, where do you see submitting this idea next? We believe that funding tends to follow results, not precede it. So these are designed to give you some preliminary results that you can put in front of somebody else and get the kind of big dollars that might be necessary to do bigger things. We talked about collaborations internally and outside. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about the timeline? You're saying fall, these are the fall grants, these are the spring grants. Like how far in advance are people applying for these? And then applying for it to getting the money and starting work?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Thank you. So how far in advance are they applying? Not very. So usually, I would guess the mean is probably 7 hours or something like that before the deadline. Just the mean, because there's several coming right at the end. You have a few that are out here, so maybe that's not a mean, but the mode is anyway. Yeah, not. So that's, you don't really. It's not a high pressure thing, but if you miss the deadline, you miss the deadline. It's an online form, so you fill out the things and send them in. So that's one part of the question. The other part was, help me.
When do they kick
When do you
in?
get the money?
Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to that is the semester, so if we do it in the spring, you can have it beginning of summer, as soon as spring is over. So we'll do this on May 15th. We try and don't always make a 2-week turnaround, which is another thing, how many, 6 months is what I'm used to experiencing. So it's more like 2-3 weeks, and we'll let you know. And then so 2 or 3 weeks from May, that's like, so as soon as that decision is made, yeah, now it may be that usually it takes a while for you to be able to spend money, to get the paperwork done and do stuff like that. So it'll probably be in next budget year. So it's an end of June kind of a thing. But we have flexibility in moving things back and forth. So it's almost instantly. And then the expectation is that these are 1-year grants, but it's not uncommon for people to need an extra 6 months, and we can do that. So, but we want you to budget for a year and plan for a year, and then if you need an extension, we will, assuming progress is good up to that point, then another 6 months can be sort of a no-cost extension can be involved.
That might be a good time to mention as well about what if I want to come back and ask additional funding?
Don't. So additional funding, there really isn't. Oh, you mean in a subsequent round? So yes, so you can come back again. Again, these are designed to be seed funding. Use a little Penn State money to get other people's money, but it doesn't mean you couldn't propose something else or an extension of that. But again, it's not really designed to be a multi-year kind of a thing. But great idea. The reviewers will look at that, look at other things, and I'm not saying it can't happen. It hasn't happened yet. But we have had people who submitted, were not successful, got feedback. So in this part of this process, review process, is we use a survey, Qualtrics survey, that our reviewers use to give numeric ratings to every criterion. And then there's a space for comments. And we have like 5 or 6 reviewers on the average, maybe 4 to 6 reviewers that review everything. So chances are, and they put verbal comments for each criteria. We encourage them to do that. And what the report you'll get will be an aggregation of all the verbal comments. So if you get a low score in one place, you're going to know what the reviewers were thinking. And that'll come back to you. So then you can turn right around May to the fall to spring, spring to fall. You can submit it again in the fall, having taken those comments into consideration. So we have had a few people who didn't get it the first time, got it the second time. Yes?
I think you mentioned, but I want to reconfirm. If the project needs external people,
Yes.
because we can't get, for example, linguistic programming, I'm not good at programming.
Right.
And my local unit or campus doesn't that. We can hire external programmers to do like consultant or contract.
Yes. But you can also contact IST or another place and say, I'm looking for somebody. But yeah, and it wouldn't hurt you to do what you suggested if you're more comfortable going outside. Again, that's your finance people it's more work for them, but they'll probably be ready for that.
We have one of our rigs right now who's using that model as well. They're
programmer is not a Penn State employee, but was necessary for the project and wrote it in, and we're funding it.
Yes.
So Kyle, I can tell you, my vision had a family who's very enthusiastic, and that's a mild way of putting it. But of course, she doesn't want me and other faculty who might be involved spread things thin. But based on what you're saying here, it sounds like if you build it into your grant, you could actually get the funding necessary to hire like an adjunct or another cover the last for you.
Yes.
Who is your teaching level and have the time to do, am I correct in that?
Yes.
process?
Mm-hmm. Did everybody hear the question? Okay, yes.
Could you guys also help us to locate people to integrate in our project? For instance, suppose I have a project, I believe someone from IHS would help, but I don't know anyone there.
Yes.
And perhaps you guys have more contact.
The question is, can we help you find people?
And then I can build my project and then submit on this round or on the next one.
Yes. We're happy to do that for you. So one of the reasons we are a four-headed center with 4 directors is so that we have, good connections back into the TLT people who do this symposium and are all the, the tech people for the university, IST, College of Education, and then outreach that has, good technology people, WPSU, others. So if you need us to help find people, we do that. And then we have our own listserv, and we can just sort of put out a call for you saying this group is looking for somebody with this kind of expertise. And we're happy to do that. Other questions? Go ahead.
Well, along the same line, I actually do course development for World Campus, and I've some amazing tech people who I could think would be perfect for this project. Yeah, if it's possible to, and I don't know whether in their organizations, whether they could do this or not, in the same way as faculty could release time. Have you ever had situations where staff has gotten released time?
That's even more common than faculty. Yeah.
That's cheap.
That's what I was
Yep.
gonna ask him before, how that works, in terms of more like staff you get.
That's a conversation
Yeah.
you'll want to have with their supervisors and all, because,
Right.
they have their own workloads and things, but, yeah, we have made that happen.
Oh, yeah, so it's not a program.
Yep, not
Yeah.
uncommon.
So basically, you just say, I'm going to need, 25% of Eric Spielvogel's time. And we say, okay, that's like $400. We can, no, I'm just kidding. we say
Per hour.
But then, so he, when he's written into that proposal, there's the assumption that his supervisor's already been talked to and is willing to, if that grant is funded, they'll find a replacement for 25% of his time. Yes.
Maybe you'll get to this, but I'm just curious if you have on your website sort of like funded grants, so we can see.
We have 2 examples of funded grants. We have abstracts of all of them, but we also have 2 actual proposals that were sent in at the bottom of this same page. Thank you. Good question. So to scroll down through here a little more, this is what
Do you have a question?
The newer skill, and that $400 rate's not going to stay very well.
So $350? What? No. Sorry. That was per hour.
Good.
Right.
Are there criteria about whether this has to be an ongoing online course versus a one-time program versus a workshop versus
No.
no?
Wide open. But go back to the idea, what's the innovation, no matter how you want to apply it, whatever format, and what's the research question you're trying to address?
So cover page, abstract of 200 words, 5 pages of double-spaced, narrative about your project, and then you can put in appendices and references and so on outside of that. You can't be guaranteed that they're going to read that. And then we look for an estimated budget. This is a high-level budget. Doesn't need to be too detailed. It can be equipment, and then just tell us what you want, how much it's going to cost, and basically what it is and why you need it. And those can take, we don't really care about the format for that as long as it's understood. And then a dissemination plan, which is 1 page. How are you going to get the results of this out? One of the reasons Penn State's doing this is to become known as a place where this kind of innovation is happening. So if we give you money, we want to know how you're going to tell other people about it. That can be journal articles, conferences, other things. And yes, you can budget for conferences using COIL funds to discuss your work. So here's some expectations. If you get one of our grants, we will expect that you submit project abstracts, quarterly reports, short reports, bio sketches of team members, things we can put on a website, again, so that when other foundations come and they hear we're doing good things, they come and they say, what is this COIL? And they get this nice picture of the dozens and dozens of people we have, researchers we have working together on different interesting projects. Share project results with the COIL community and local symposia. We have a research symposium of our own. There's a MOOC research symposium. There are venues like this where it's expected that you'll be talking to others about that work. You have to maintain, stay within Penn State policies and serve as reviewers. So if you get one of these grants, we're going to expect you to come back and pay it back in terms of reviewing other people's proposals. Because you'll know better than others what a good proposal looks like, right? Because you will have written one. So here are the criteria. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but what you see is these are the things we care about. These are the points we award. These are the questions that are in the reviewer's mind as they review your proposal. I don't know how to make it any clearer than that. So you know how much value there is in that. You know exactly the questions that should be in their head. And, I recommend that you write your proposal, you sit down and you use this, you ask a friend to use this, you revise your proposal and...
So right to the test, huh?
Yep. Because that's what we need to know those things. And those really describe what we're looking for. So again, it's enhancing learning through online innovation. It's the team being ready to do what the team is about to do. It's applicability. Larry mentioned that if we do it over here, will there be applicability elsewhere? Yes.
I know this may not be a good question, but
I bet it is a good one.
when you say applicability is 5 points with 2 bullets, or 1 with 2, is it 2.5 points each, or a total 5 points for however the reviewer distributes?
Total 5 points. So they...
However the reviewer distributes.
Right. So those questions, and that's the same for every category. Right, so it's just basically they have this number of points and they read those questions and those are the questions in their mind and they're holistically distributing the points across those questions. That was a good question. I was right. You were wrong. So cost effectiveness, is that, for the money invested, is that, a reasonable return? And then feasibility again is, can this happen with the money and time that are estimated? And an evaluation plan, research/evaluation plan. So a research plan describing how the effectiveness of the implementation of the tool, resource, whatever, is going to be assessed. Now, how are you going to judge success? These are all things that are listed in the 5-page...
You've got about 3 minutes, Scott.
Right. Okay. And then, how are you... will this create external funding? And then your dissemination plan. So you get an idea for how all those will be valued based on the points there. And then to see an example, click this highly rated proposal. And I thought there was more than one. And then we have already some of the recordings of the RIG review team's kickoff meeting, and that's for the reviewers. This is really for the, these are like the webinars we do to help people understand that. And you'll see announcements of those. We have, before I open it to just wide open questions, we have some of these little cards, and we'll put them just by the door back there. Here's my stack.
Okay. I may have left all mine up at the other.
So, and here, this is probably enough for the room. So you can pick that up. If you're like me, you operate on little papers in your pocket, even though you have all to-do lists electronically. That's what gets it on your to-do list. So feel free to grab one of those and take it from there. So any questions? I don't know. One response to call for proposals. No, I think he's wondering what's this? One response to call for proposals. I don't understand what that is.
Someone posted a response to our call for proposals. So that must be a message or something.
I don't know why we can't see anything. I don't know what that is. Sorry. I will find out.
You weren't supposed to see that.
Right. That's why as soon as I saw it, I put it right back below the border.
Any questions, comments, sir?
Does the innovation that you're talking about, does the innovation refer specifically to online technology? In other words, is it technological innovation that you're looking for?
No. So it's an innovation that basically occurs online. So it could be, we have people thinking about doing a remote tutoring thing where they're trying to find the best ways for future teachers to be working with Latino students in someplace else, but they want sort of the best tablet kind of scenario so they can write down math problems and students can write answers, like a shared whiteboard or shared tablet kind of a thing. So there's really no new pieces there. It's just kind of like this would be a state-of-the-art remote tutoring system, things like that. So it doesn't, you don't have to build a technology at all. That is an actual example. Okay, well, I'll be happy to connect you with them because, again, a cross-disciplinary team would be good. That is Megan Hopkins in the College of Education.
So if you had an example, if you had a pedagogical, teaching problem in your classroom of some sort, and you think of a really creative way to solve that, and there's an online innovation that can help make that happen, that's what we want to know about. You don't have to, like as Kyle said, you don't have to actually build a mechanism or a tool, but you say, oh, I found this cloud tool, and we've got one right now using, Kyle mentioned the tutoring, Smart Sparrow, and comparing Smart Sparrow to, help me out, Newton. And so we've given some funding to enable Brian Smith to get, both of these products and do some comparison and tell us then, what did he think? How did they work? So, just to leave you with this, we don't want to lock you down into over-worrying about the innovation piece. Talk with us if you have an idea. We can help craft it into a way that we think will sell better to the reviewers. But we don't like to say no to too many ideas. We help you to refine those. And the idea is, folks, we want to use these revenues to help rise all the boats in the harbor. Okay? All right.
Thank you for your interest, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Hey, one of the COIL rigs is showing next. Conrad Tucker, who was sitting right back there in the room, was doing his 3D printer. I forget what room he's in, but... Oh, it's right in here?
No, I think 106.
Oh,
106.
And there's one in
This
here.
is 108.
Oh, and then
This is
Macmillan is in
a
okay,
badging,
the
library badging thing.
Good, thank you,
Great,
folks.
thank you.
There's some cards back there.